Good morning and welcome back. It's the video everyone's been talking about for days now. Two New Orleans police officers beating a 64-year-old retired school teacher on Bourbon Street. It was caught on tape by an Associated Press TV crew. Here it is. As you can see, 3 officers involved have been suspended without pay. This is somewhat after the fact, though. The 2 men punched and kicked Robert Davis, and a third is accused of grabbing and shoving, as you can see right here. That's a TV producer as he's showing him their credentials. All 3 officers have pled not guilty. Davis is due in court today, and that's why we're talking about it, on charges of public intoxication, battery on an officer, and public intimidation. Davis says he was trying to ask the officers about a curfew that was in place. Davis claims he wasn't drunk, in fact hasn't had a drink in 25 years. His lawyer also says Davis wasn't tested for alcohol after he was arrested. That could be problematic. Joining me this morning to talk about this beating, criminal attorney Steve Newell. Steve, thanks very much for coming in.
Good morning.
You deal with cases much like this. To me, it seems like a slam dunk here. I mean, the fact that it's caught on tape, as you see, and you deal with excessive force used by police officers. I mean, I'm always going to err on the side of the cops because, they've got a tough job to do out there. What could possibly be the reason for this?
Well, a police officer is justified in using physical force that's reasonable and appropriate in order to effect an arrest, or alternatively, if he believes that he's about to be assaulted or a third person is to be assaulted, he may use that degree of force that he reasonably believes necessary to thwart the assault. But in a case such as this, I think the key words are reasonable and appropriate.
Mm-hmm. And yet these police officers have pled not guilty. Is that a matter of just normal protocol? You do that and let it go to a trial? How can you say you're not guilty when you see this?
Well, I think police officers are entitled to the same rights that the private citizens are in terms of a fair trial, a presumption of innocence, and to present their version and their story in an open courtroom. Mm-hmm. And that is what they're going to intend to do in a case such as this by pleading not guilty. However, when one looks at this on the footage that's been provided, it seems relatively clear that the force was neither reasonable nor appropriate nor necessary to effect the arrest of Mr. Davis.
I don't think anybody would disagree. There are always bad apples in every business. But when we're talking about law enforcement, people that carry guns and badges and have that kind of an authority, what is the percentage? I've heard 5%. 10%, depending on the police force, the region of the country. What's your experience?
Well, my experience is that it depends upon the department and the department's underlying philosophy and leadership. In the Denver metropolitan community, you'll find different police forces that have differing policies and differing problems with their policies regarding use of force with the public.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to come back. I want to talk to you about the credibility of Robert Davis. Do you find him credible? What is he, if he does sue a metropolitan police force, such as the case in New Orleans, or if you were to want to sue the Denver Police Department, what are your odds of winning, number one, given the climate, and other questions like that? So stay with us here on Good Day, Colorado. Thanks very much for watching. Welcome back. We're talking about the New Orleans police officers caught on tape beating that 64-year-old man, a retired school teacher. Robert Davis is his name. Several people have come forward as witnesses to say they saw this beating. Here's what one person had to say.
Then, as they're continuing to beat, the New Orleans officer assaults the cameraman. And then the officer walks back over and continues to watch the beating. At that point, blood starts to come out. Blood is going everywhere. Covering the sidewalk, and they're still beating. I said, I witnessed this. I'm thinking they need witnesses, and I saw what happened. He's a U.S. Customs. He's a federal agent. And I said, I want to tell somebody about this. And he said, it's none of your effing business.
I'm back with attorney Steve Newell here, a defense attorney. Why wouldn't Mr. Davis just give up, give in? Why would you fight back? That's interesting. I mean, we can't look into a guy's mind and heart at the time.
Well, it doesn't appear that he did fight back.
Well, it's right there. You saw that on tape, didn't you? I mean, it looks like he's struggling.
Well, at most, I would call that passive resistance as opposed to real aggressive or physical resistance. And certainly the level of force which can be used and is appropriate and necessary depends upon the level of resistance involved.
Okay.
Here, Mr. Davis was clearly, at most, passively resisting.
What do you find Mr. Davis credible?
Absolutely.
There's something, this concept of qualified immunity as it regards government officials, police officials. Describe that on a federal level and a state level.
Well, public employees are immune from suit in the federal courts, and in particular in a case like this, Mr. Davis may seek what's called a 1983 civil rights action against the police officer seeking money damages. His first hurdle that he must overcome is qualified immunity of the police officers. First, he must show that he had a constitutional right which was violated, which certainly an unlawful seizure under the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable use of force, is a constitutional violation. Secondly, he must show that there was a clearly established rule of law that was violated by these police officers. And in order to get past the immunity and avoid dismissal of his lawsuit at its inception.
When we close, I'm going to ask you what your odds are, or what you think is going to happen, the end result here, on a state level or even a city level. How does this qualified immunity factor in?
Well, the states oftentimes give more protection, as does Colorado, than the federal government does.
Really?
In terms of public employees working within the scope of their employment. If you are within the scope of your employment as a public employee, as a peace officer, then you can only be sued if your conduct was willful and wanton.
Would this, if this, what happened in New Orleans, happened in Denver, would that fit all that criteria to overcome that qualified immunity, do you think?
Well, of course, we're only seeing segments of this, and these officers are entitled to their constitutional rights of presumptions of innocence, but by the footage that I've seen, it appears that they're both criminally and civilly liable. So
if you were to predict what's going to happen here?
I would predict that, that the police officers will be found criminally liable. The question of civil liability is another question altogether because of the immunity of the police officers.
Interesting. All right, Steve, thank you very much for coming in. From your perspective, we appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
All right. Have a good day.